Namaste and welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack, coming at you live from Harvard Innovation Lab in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm here with
Happy Hanna, and I am in Bracebridge at the headquarters of Happy Jack Yoga in Ontario, Canada.
Nice. I love it. I'm excited to be back there just a week from tomorrow. And we'll be driving back to Muskoka to spend some time with family. So that's going to be very nice. Uh, we got a great conversation lined up here today. In fact, we got a question. I see Lorna is here. Lorna, thank you for sending in a question this morning. We're going to come to that later in the podcast. But first, I wanted to just do a little bit of reflection on, because this is a practice as yogis, right? Is to take the time to reflect on our practice, to reflect on our sadhana, our spiritual practice. And for myself right now, reflecting on an amazing, amazing weekend in Washington, D.C. It was my first time there. I got my dear friend Henry Sutanto hosted me. He's like one of the OG original Happy Jack yogis. He came to our first retreat in Mexico, in our first Mexico retreat in 2013. He's been to India with us. He's been to Bali twice. He's come to Canada. He's definitely, and yeah, he's the guy that comes to all the cool stuff. And it was just really nice being able to spend a weekend with Henry. But of course, the reason I was there, it was a beautiful dialogue that came together. There was a dialogue of Bhakti yogis and Christians just engaging and really talking about like what is the commonality in the traditions? How can we understand each other? How can we respect each other? How can a Christian comfortably practice yoga? How can a yogi connect with and welcome and create a beautiful space for their Christian students? And I was invited by a friend to this, but it makes such a difference to be immersed and surrounded with beautiful people. And I feel like that's what the weekend was. And part of that was because there was some Happy Jack yogis there. There was Henry, of course, Hope as well. She lives in the area in Maryland, and she got to come. We brought her to the temple. With the three of us met up at 4:15 in the morning, which means the alarm clock went off at 2:45 in the morning. That's early even for me. But to be able to come together and do these mantras and prayers and meditation practices, just such a beautiful way to start the day. So there's lots I can say there, but I'll pause for a minute, Hanna. What are you hearing in this? Coming together to DC, our friend Henry doing the practice. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling the high vibes. And when you connected from, like you've sent the fam jam in WhatsApp, we have a little group, you've sent really amazing pictures from there. And then when we connected after your weekend there, I could really feel the incredible vibes. Like I missed that when I kind of experienced that through you when I saw your energy and all the things you shared on our team meeting. I was like, oh, I missed that. And so I can't wait to hear more what you discovered and what the conversations were that you had both at this conference and with the Happy Jack Yogis and with our friend Mars. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope you can pour a lot of that into our episode today.
Yeah, it really comes down to the people.
Yeah.
That's what made it. I feel like, at that dialogue, it was a really interesting conversation, but really the magic for me was in the side conversations, like being able to sit down one-on-one and talk to these yogis who've been doing this, for half a century, and being able to ask them like vulnerable questions about am I on the right path? I mean, am I crazy doing, I shaved my head, like what's going on here? Just being able to be myself, not like I think back in the day when I worked for John Deere, going to conferences, it would have been all about presenting my best self and showing up, looking good, talking good, presenting myself, as best as I can to hopefully get a promotion. And here it was like I wasn't there to impress anybody.
Mm.
I was there to be the new guy, the new kid on the block. And I feel like just being able to be in those environments is so nourishing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like then it's about like discovering your own path by being in conversation with kind of seniors who probably have seen and they've walked the path. Most of them, many of them were born into this tradition, and others chose it as their like hearth path, right? And so it sounds like it was really nourishing then.
And what I really got from it is so healthy to have different perspectives.
Mm.
I can see as much as like, say there's these incredibly learned monks who come from India and they teach us and they're so darn smart. Like, I love learning from them and they're going to present a certain perspective. So like they would encourage me like, hey, keep on the path of celibacy and monastic life and going really deep and that is a path for some people. And in a way, they're a little bit biased because that's what they've dedicated their lives to. And so it was really healthy talking to these, householders as well, people who are in relationships and they have families and partners and children, and they are all equally, practicing bhakti yoga. And they just had like a fresh new perspective. And it's not like they were trying to talk me out of anything, but I feel like the ones who I really respect, including our friend Mars, who I'll speak about in a minute here, are the ones that encourage me to like to trust my own nature. Like who am I at my core? Not don't have to be like this person or be like that person, but what is right for me and what's right in this moment. So it's like, yeah, just being able to be in those conversations and it was just such a range. So I mentioned our friend Mars. I got to spend the first day I got there. As soon as I got off the plane, hightailed it to go see Mars and spend time with him and his wife. And I mean that might have been the highlight. There were so many
So
highlights, but
I gotta say, Mars, anyone in our community who's taken which training is it? The Bhakti training that he was yoga and spirituality, 200
the yoga
hours,
philosophy and spirituality training, yeah,
which is
and
a
Bhagavad
20,
Gita too.
yeah. So he's contributed to a couple of the shorter trainings that we have, and those are self-study modules if someone's interested. But what I want to say here is about Mars is like I've never met him in person. I've only met him on Zoom because you've made friends with him. You
Mhm.
met him at Hippocrates kind of randomly, wasn't that right? Like we did
Yeah,
not know that he would have anything to do with the tradition that you're now kind of interested in, or that yoga that you're doing right now. And then you made friends, and the impact of this person, like I don't know if you guys have ever met someone like that. It's rare to meet someone like that. His presence is pure love,
mhm.
and his eyes, the way, and he's not like a floating angel wannabe. It's real. He's somehow someone who makes a really, really deep impact, even over Zoom like this. And so
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you got to go and spend time with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I mean, yeah, that he can make that impact over Zoom. He's 82 years young, so it's not like he's a tech whiz kid. But you're right, his presence, it comes through in Zoom. It definitely comes through in person. And so we met a few years ago at Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida. I sat down to have a meal, and there was this, elderly man there. I thought I was just going to make some small talk, or well, of course, me, I don't make small talk, but I started talking about what I'm interested in. And it just so turns out that like he got into bhakti yoga 60 years ago, back in the 1960s. And it's just he's got an incredible story, but it's really about who he is and just being able to be in his presence and he really what I appreciate about him, and I think all of us should seek out people like this in our life, is that they speak the truth and they say what they say what they see and they say what they mean and what they feel.
With
And
so much love and with so
yeah,
much compassion and kind, like it doesn't feel like he would ever preach. Like it feels like there's like so much space in his presence.
yeah. Yeah, totally. And and at the same time, he's not there to just like make me feel all warm and fuzzy. Like in a way, he's a teacher, mentor. Like if I say something like, "Oh, I don't know what to do," or and he just catches the vocabulary that I use, and he's like, "Well, wait a minute, you're in your head right now. You know, you don't need to figure this out. You don't need to decide. Your heart will know. And he'll like, he's not afraid to correct me on those kind of
Mhm.
things versus just all empowerment. And you
Yeah.
got, like, it's not
Yeah.
like that. It's real.
And I love
And
what you said earlier. I think you said Mars said, or kind of like what you walked away with, or that he was kind of highlighting. And the sentence I wrote down, because I take notes while you talk, because I think it's fascinating. A sentence you said was to trust my own nature.
yeah, yeah, exactly. To understand, I mean, that came up as well yesterday. Another, I'll jump around here. I had my
Yeah.
therapy session yesterday with Danya, who's also a Bhakti yogi. And so we got to talk about this. So my conversations with my dear friend Henry, conversations with Mars, conversations with people at this conference, like all of this, and be able to like decompress and debrief this with my therapist. And I think it was her that used that, like really understand, well, what is my nature? Like some people, maybe they are on a path. And because I brought up the joke how on the last episode, you know, when I asked you the question, I said, all right, where does Happy Jack end up? Does he become a monk? Does he meet some God conscious woman, or does he end up in the bushes in Canada out on the lake? And you said, "Hmm, maybe all three." And that's, you know, there's truth in that. And so she was just helping me recognize, like, what is my true nature? You know, what feels natural and right for me. Um, but it's like, yeah, I think that's what that really lights me up is being just, we found this last summer when we did the Muskoka retreat. Remember, we'd been doing everything on Zoom for some years, and we love that. We're here right now. But then when we had, you know, Sue, who is here, and others, you know, of course, many others who were together with us in person, that weekend, like we came away so lit up, so energized. And it's just that reminder of being together with people in meaningful connection. I mean, just another example this weekend. So on the last day, Sunday, before I was flying home, Henry organized a little brunch at his house, and he invited a couple of his friends over. And the four of us, like we just sat there. We had a brunch. Henry's like a culinary chef. He's just like, we, oh my
He's a
goodness, like
foodie.
he's a foodie. I mean, I've honestly, anybody out there who's cooked for me, I apologize, but I have to say Henry is the best. He's number one of anybody I've ever experienced. He's, you know, it was like a 6 course meal. Like he just goes above and beyond. But we sat at the kitchen, we sat at the table having this brunch for 4 hours. And then all of a sudden we look at the clock and it's like, I gotta go to the airport. But like 4 hours just like flew by. Nobody went to the bathroom. Nobody got up. We just like sat there engaged in a conversation. Boom, time flew by. And and it was easy and natural. And you know, like sometimes I'm in a context, like whether it's a classroom or another environment, and I'm like looking at the time, or I'm feeling myself get drained because I'm with people. And I think that's when I can't fully be myself. But when we're in a space where we can be ourselves, you know, and so for us as yogis and yoga teachers, you know, it's important to think about when we're going to teach a yoga class or lead a workshop or a conversation. It's so much more easy and easeful when we can just be ourselves.
And what was it that made it such an experience? Was the type of conversation or the people? Like what was it about them that made it such that that 4 hours flew by? Because I know you, 4 hours at a table I have never experienced with you. And I'm a type of person who would easily do that
Yeah,
given the opportunity. Tell me
it's
about
true.
the people.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I mean, I'm not the type to sit there for 4 hours. What it was, so it was definitely the people. So it was Lauren and Natalie. Natalie came to our 200-hour training in Finland in 2018. You'll
Wow.
remember. And so we, you know, I knew her from like 6 years ago. And then this other girl, Lauren, who does martial arts with Henry. And so the four of us, so it was the people who were there. It was the fact that everybody was there curious to ask questions. Like nobody was there preaching, nobody was there, you know what I mean? Like nobody was there to teach or preach, but really to be curious and ask questions. And everybody was like hungry for transformation. Like for example, the one girl, Lauren, is just making these huge life changes. Has recently discovered yoga and has gotten sober and making all these lifestyle changes and kind of in that place of like recognizing that some of her friends that she used to hang out with, like she's it's not kind of the environment she wants to be around anymore. So she feels herself called to make these changes. And I just get so excited about that because I'm like, I get it. That's where I was when I was, her age, around 30 or something like that. And it's like just when we can talk about becoming the best versions of ourselves and all of everybody was sharing their own experience. And it just, I don't know, it was very natural. It just
Mm,
flowed.
that's so amazing. And then it fills your cup instead of being draining.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's interesting. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, moments like this make me realize, well, maybe I shouldn't just identify myself as an introvert. Even if that's my tendency, even if I do know that I need quiet time and I need alone time, it's just this reminder of like actually there's certain environments where you're with people that you do thrive. And it was an action-packed weekend. On the Saturday night, we went to downtown DC and went to a kirtan with a incredible artist named Gauravani. And I mean, just, so for 2 hours, we're just like, when we start seated, but by the end of it, everybody's standing and dancing and singing and clapping. And I'm looking over at my buddy Henry, who is kind of newer to this environment. And he's just, he's clapping. He's just got this big, big smile on his face. And I'm just like, this is it. This Saturday night, no alcohol, no drug, like not no nonsense like that. But we were just like high on life. We went home. Henry and I, like, it went from 7 to 9, but we stayed up past midnight
Whoa.
talking. Like it went way past my bedtime, but we were just like so lit up and inspired. So in one way, I noticed that like it messed with my routine and I, sleep in, da da da. So it's not like I want to live like this every night, but
It's
to do
okay
it
to have those
periodically.
experiences, right? It
Yeah,
also
totally.
fills you up. And like, not to interrupt you, but like what I hear you share is like a contextual introvert. Like in
Mm,
some contexts, that is kind of where it happens. And then other contexts and situations, environments, that changes and you actually feel more like an extrovert. And that's really like I love hearing about this weekend and this experience, all the experiences you've had, because I could feel that in your energy in the photos. It's really it energizes me, even if I wasn't there. That's kind of
yeah.
fun.
It is. It is. It's like, I mean, just doing things that we don't do all the time. Another thing we did, Henry, the first night I got there after spending the day with Mars, Henry figured it was a good idea to take me to a yoga class because this is when we're going to wake up the next morning at 2:45 a.m., right? Crazy early. And he's like, I'm going to take Jack to a yoga class, a nice, get relaxed before the evening. So he takes me to essentially a Bikram hot yoga class. So the temperature is like what's that, 42 Celsius or 108 Fahrenheit. Like I haven't done these hot yoga in like over 10 years. And it's hot in DC. It's already a hot day. And it kicked my butt. It like I loved it. I'm so happy I went. I drank two massive jugs of water during the class. It felt so good, but even by the end of the standing series, I had to take Shavasana. And I was like, I felt myself, being that teacher to myself. And it's like, oh, like my buddy Henry, who I introduced to yoga, back in 2012, he's still up doing the poses. And I'm like flat out in Shavasana. And I'm like, I gotta be okay with this. Like, let go of the ego, Jack. Like, and I was okay with that, but it was just like a reminder because there was that part of me that was like, oh, I should stand up and I can do this dancer's pose. But because I wasn't used to the heat, I just couldn't catch my breath. Like it was just like it almost didn't feel healthy. And not to say it was unhealthy, but the right thing to do is to take Shavasana.
Yeah, and I think it's hot yoga can be like that. It takes a little bit to get into it again, like the body to adapt And that, so
Yeah.
if you haven't done it in 10 years, that can easily be the experience. And I'm sure if you went a couple of times, you would totally love it and do all of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah, I felt that. And a reminder, like just for all of us, for those of you live here, those of you listening, those who are yoga teachers, I won't say the name of the studio, it doesn't matter. It was great and everything. And Henry and I talked about this, and Henry's a lifetime, like he's an annual member. He's been going there for years, but he and I both acknowledged, as nice as it is and convenient for him, the connection wasn't there. The
Mm,
love wasn't there. But when we showed up, I just think about how we are and how our students are and how our teachers are. Like when somebody comes into the studio, we want to like welcome them and see them. And if it's comfortable, give them a hug. You don't have to give them a hug, but really see them and welcome them. And I felt it was just a bit more transactional, just like, oh yeah, you're Henry's friend. Yeah, we'll sign you up. Yeah, here's a mat, go in. And then the class kind of right into the teaching. And so I don't say this as a criticism, but just as a reminder of like maybe that's your average yoga class. And then where I took Henry into that kirtan, which is like a bhakti yoga studio in downtown DC. Very different environment, more like what we create here. And as soon as we come in, welcome, you just like seeing in people's eyes. I mean, this one guy, Ethan, the studio manager, I talked with him for, so long, and he's so present and so high vibe and so welcoming. And and he was giving me the time. I didn't even realize it actually. So we were talking right up until it was time to go. He's like, "Oh, I guess we should get in and get started." We go in, and then he sits down with the musicians, and he's the guy who like kicks off the kirtan. So like he gave me as a new student so much of his time, to the point where he actually showed up for the kirtan a little bit late, but he wasn't going to brush me off. It was just like this beautiful moment. And he also wasn't presenting himself as like the leader of the community and the guy who kicks off the kirtan music experience. It was just it was just a really nice experience to feel, and just reminded me like this is what we want to create as teachers, as community leaders.
yeah, in Happy Jack Yoga, we call it creating connection. And
Yeah.
we teach in our programs how to do it, like you're saying, from the beginning, when you walk into the room or when the yogis come to you, to actually connect with them, look them in the eyes. It doesn't have to take that long to create
Right.
connection. And then that creates a safe space most of the time. Like that is more likely to create a safe space for the people to trust you if you're going to be their teacher, to feel that, okay, the teacher saw me and will, it doesn't have to be, very deep or very intricate, but it changes the dynamics when there is connection.
That's what it's all about. Yeah. I mean, if we were to sum up, I remember teaching in Fort Wayne, in Indiana one time, helping to lead a teacher training there, 2014. And Jennifer, that was her name, Jennifer, the studio owner. And she's like, if after teaching the class and leading the YTT, she's like, if I were to sum up, Happy Jack Yoga in one word, it's connection. Like that's really, and that's what you and I, Hannah, we really believe in. We're all in on that, and we seek to create that just here in this podcast, in our Zoom calls, and certainly in person.
And I think it's because that's what we crave and that's what yoga is.
Yeah. That's it. Yoga is union. It's to unite. It's to connect. And oh my goodness, it's just like, yeah. So I mean, coming home from this weekend, such a high. I started. I'm all over the place, but my friend Mars, I got to show this. So there's only a handful of people who are live. I guess those who are on Facebook and YouTube will see it. But my friend Mars gifted me these mala beads. For those on Spotify, you won't be able to see, but these beads, these are for chanting mantra on, and they are special. He bought them in Mayapur, India in 1977. He was over there he'd been there many times in the 70s. And in 1977, his teacher passed. And so he was over there, and that's when he picked up these beads. And for him to gift them to me, I was just like speechless. Yeah.
So to describe those beads for those who can't see them, they're really, really big, like dark brown or kind of darkish brown, as big
Mm,
as the tip of a thumb, each bead. And
mm.
then there's 108 of them in one big loop. So when Jack holds them, it's like a snake or something. You need two hands to hold those mala beads. And so what's the purpose of them? What would he use them for? Why did he buy them? And why did he give them to you?
Oh yeah, that's some good questions. So they're for chanting mantra on. So, it's a mantra meditation for connecting to, really connecting to your spiritual practice. Maybe for some of you connecting to divinity, whatever it is that you believe in. And so he got them because at the time he was very much a practitioner of bhakti yoga, since it really took off in the 1960s. And I mean, why he gave them to me, I don't know. I don't deserve them because they are really special. But perhaps, we've just had some really meaningful conversations. I consider him a dear friend. He knows that I'm sincerely practicing bhakti yoga now and chanting these mantras. These are not the original ones his teacher, Srila Prabhupada, gave to him, but these are ones, still a really nice set. And when I show them, like I showed them to people at the conference in DC, I've shown them to people here at the ashram in Boston, and their mouths like just drop. Like, what? I mean, they're really special. And
And the way you use them is you say the mantra once and you touch one of the beads, and then you take the next bead and you repeat the mantra. That's what the mantra meditation is. And a
yeah.
lot of yogis do that with less precious beads,
Yeah.
but it's quite an honor to receive such important beads. Have you been using them or will you save them or how does that work?
I felt like, I mean, the beads that I've had, I picked up in Brooklyn, New York, a couple of years ago, and I bought them, and I never really had a strong sense of connection with them. Like they work, but now it's like, I mean, it sounds silly to say, but I sleep with these. I bring these into my bed. I just don't want to part from them.
Mhm.
There's just some energy, and I feel like I get to just I know how sincerely and how much Mars brought to his practice. And I can just imagine him when he was younger than me, being there in India, doing these practices, and there's just something deeply special about it. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really grateful.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, some of I'm sure there's lots I'm forgetting, but that was, some of the highlights from this past weekend in DC. And I guess, just to sum it up for us as yogis and yoga teachers, it's that we asked a few episodes. What's the purpose of life? Is it the journey or the destination? And it's that trick question. It's the company. It's the people we spend it with. And now I find myself, I've already followed up. I've already sent follow up. I'm not anybody who knows me. I don't send a lot of like proactive messages. Because I just try to limit my communications. But I've already like sent proactive follow ups to Henry, got to stay in touch, and to Mars, we got to connect on Zoom, and all of this. It's like when you get to spend time with people that you can just have real, vulnerable, and open conversations with, and be yourself. It's like there's nothing more meaningful, So
Yeah, would you say that those conversations reveal something to you about yourself, about your own true nature, something about the nature of life and God and our purpose here?
it definitely helps me reveal things about myself. Like, because I think I'm always trying to figure it out. I don't know if it's a male thing. I don't know if it's an engineering mind thing. It's probably a human thing. I don't know what it is, but I'm always trying to figure it out. And that means I'm in my head. And for example, like some of the people I talked to at this conference, and they were just like, anytime I had a question that, they don't know me, they can't answer it for me, but often they're just like, you're gonna know. You don't have to figure this out. You don't have to decide. You don't have to figure out who your God conscious woman is that you're gonna meet. You don't have to figure out who your next spiritual teacher is. You don't need to figure that out. Like you're gonna know in your heart, and it's gonna be evident. And I feel like it just like simple, like I guess I knew that, but it's something about hearing that and hearing it at the time that I'm contemplating it, and it takes pressure off. It's like, yeah, I don't have to figure this out.
Yeah, because you have a tendency of being really like proactive with life, and you feel like, as someone who's lived with you for 10 years, I can say that you're very like responsible like that. Like you feel like it's your responsibility to make things happen, which
Mm,
is a different paradigm. Like that's great for achieving things and getting shit done. But
mm,
then this is about, to me, it sounds like, and maybe that's not how you would word it, but like, like to me, it sounds like this is how you allow the mystery to reveal itself. Life as a mystery, the universe as a mystery reveals itself. Love and connections and all of those things that we're trying to figure out. Um, what they say when they say you will know it in your heart is something reveals itself to you. It's like falling in love with something, or knowing that this really feels right, and it's not because you figured it out, it's because it reveals itself to you. And I think that is the principle of enlightenment too, and
yeah.
of God.
That's right. Yeah, like realize, like when it reveals
Yeah,
itself, when we realize it. That's that
yeah.
kind of term. There's jnana, which is knowledge, and vijñāna, which is realized knowledge. Right. So like I can read the books, I can take the teacher trainings, I can even have people teach me and tell me, but it's not until I realize it, and it feels right for me. And it's
I
just
love it. Realized wisdom is like
uh,
activated, like it's integrated. It is wisdom that comes alive in you.
mm,
And that can't be micromanaged. Like, yes, we can do things to put ourselves into environments like what you're saying that are kind of feed this and feed your consciousness, and like you say, the association to incredible individuals and sacred contexts, maybe practices, maybe sacred locations, churches, temples, places in nature. And that's when the wisdom comes alive in you and reveals itself, versus the other kind of knowledge, which is facts that we know that are helpful for some things. I love this. It's so fascinating.
yeah, and I feel it at least for me, what really energizes it and what makes it come to life, it's being with people, being with like really good, sincere, humble seekers, and just like I and also and ultimately though, like a lot of the realizations come from myself doing the journaling. So that's like a practice, my therapist has had me doing these past couple of weeks. And so now I find myself journaling, and I'm like, either I start, dear God, or whoever I'm journaling, and I just write things like, I'm so happy for Hanna. I genuinely want her to be happy. And then I think like, wow, I'm just so grateful to have met Mars at this stage of life, and to be able to have his association, and like, wow, thank you, Henry, for your incredible hospitality, like just all of these things. And I just like so much to be grateful for. It kind of blows my mind. I'm sure I got challenges coming my way, and adversity, and tragedy, and all that's coming all of our way eventually. But it's like it feels like, and it doesn't mean it's easy. Like in one part I could say I'm struggling because I haven't quote unquote figured it out. I'm trying to figure stuff out. But then that's where I can see Mars sitting across the couch from me. And that's where he jumps in, and he's like, no, my friend, like it's not about figuring it out. Like you got to understand, you are love. Can you not see that? Can you not understand that? And I won't be able to say all the things he says, but just, yeah, just learning to trust myself. And I think that this is great work that we can do as yogis and yoga teachers and bring into our classes and our workshops and our social media posts. Those who are following us on social media, you see we've been more active, and that's great. And I think, we've talked about, we want to get even more deep, like some of these deep journaling questions that we've been doing, and I've been doing with Diana Eck, here at the Harvard Divinity School, being able to bring some of this inquiry into our social media as well. So that's just a seed for everybody listening. Like, how can we bring the best, most impactful work, not just the high vibe quote or the high vibe photo? That's good. That's where we're at right now. But now how can we also bring this like deep, life-changing work, to our community?
Yeah, and that is part of our plan, is to start pouring this kind of journaling questions onto into our social media and into our communications, as we, as we keep creating that. So I hope that
Exactly.
some of those journaling questions that you have with your therapist, that you can share those with us.
I got so many good ones. I almost feel like, I mean, I could just put one up every day. I could put multiple up. I have so many good questions, and that's what it's all about. It's about the quality of the question. Now,
Yeah.
forget about the answer. It's like the quality of the question. But I want to jump to, speaking of questions, our dear friend Lorna from Jersey/Portugal right now. She's kicking back, feet up in the air, blue skies. Lorna's enjoying life in Portugal. I'm gonna read the question she sent in just right before the episode. So it's about samskaras. And so Lorna says, hi, through yoga and vipassana meditation training, samskaras were described to me as scoring or marks on one's psyche by experiences, conscious and unconscious, from this life and possibly past lifetimes. These affect our reactions, viewpoints, and contentment going forwards. I understand that, some samskaras can be deep scorings and difficult to remove, and some are lighter and rubbed out through practices of meditation, contemplation, positive karmas, and yoga techniques involving acceptance, bigger perspectives, forgiveness, gratitude, etc. So the question, in yoga, please explain how they, as in samskaras, are linked to karma. So Buddhist practices from the Eightfold Path seem very relevant here too, in respect to removing samskaras. Big topic. Would love to hear your perspective. Thanks so much, Lorna or Luna Yoga. Nice question. Do you want to jump in first, honey? You want me to go first? So I love how you jump right in, Karma, and said, how are they linked to Lorna? You asked how are they linked to karma. And so let's establish what is karma. So karma, the Sanskrit word, the most general translation is action. Now, of course, when we use the term karma, we're often talking about the idea, the concept, the law of karma, which essentially is with every action, there is a reaction. And we can see that. Like I bet if every single one of you think about your life, you can see where if you take an action, there's a reaction, right? I don't know why I thought of this, but if you step on the gas as fast as you can in your car, the reaction you're going to spin the wheels and make a squeal and maybe some smoke. If you, yeah, I know you wouldn't do this, you're a yogi, but if you hit somebody, probably they're going to react. Either they're going to react by hitting you back, or they're going to react by running. Like there's going to be some reaction. So we can see this explicitly right through our material eyes, the idea of karma, action and reaction. Now, if we think about samskaras, which you correctly defined as these patterns, these conditionings, they're almost like if you think about a vehicle that drove down a muddy road, and you think about like deep ruts in the mud, and if you try to drive down that road, you keep getting pulled back into the tracks that are already there. You try to drive out, but it keeps pulling you back into those tracks. this idea of this conditioning or these samskaras, and they come from past experiences, right? So if we're traumatized, Hanna, you were traumatized when your first husband passed away. That created some trauma, that created some samskaras. It had it such that, I mean, you could explain this better, but like, for example, you didn't always feel safe. If you're walking around a city at night, needing to have the
Or
doors.
the better example is when I then fall in love with someone, or even when I got Coco, my dog, my first trauma question is, okay, so when are you gonna die? And how are you gonna die? I need to know now because I can't take the risk of falling in love because that's gonna hurt me bad because I already lost someone unexpectedly. Like that is an imprint that I need to work on.
Yeah,
The
right. So
samskara.
right. So that's a trauma, and it's a samskara that you have. It's a pattern that's shown up with multiple people in your life, including pets, including humans. And so then the question that Lorna asked is, well, how is this linked to karma? So if we think, in Hannah's example, you have this trauma, you have this samskara because an action happened. Your first husband was, suddenly, tragically, taken away and passed away. And so that action happened, and so there's a reaction. And so we can see that. And so we know that, as you pointed out, Lorna, there's many different yogic ways to heal trauma, to navigate it, to process it. And of course, it goes at different pace for each of us. But then there's this idea of like, well, some of us are born into a world of trauma. I think majority of us who are on this call right now, I think we're pretty blessed and fortunate. But then it's like, well, why are some people born into a third world country and with poverty, with disease, with illness, with all kinds of different terrible things that they're going through? How come they're born into that? Like they haven't incurred any karma yet. And so that's where the idea, this yogic idea of reincarnation comes in. It becomes challenging for those of us on the call here who are Christian, and we just have this single life model. It becomes really hard to explain, like, how come some people are born into unfortunate circumstances and some people are born into beautiful, abundant, loving environments. So in one sense, the yogic teachings with this idea of reincarnation helps to explain that. So actions that we've taken, actions that have happened to us in previous life, end up carrying forward into this life. And I know for myself, it can be a little bit hard to comprehend. Like, really, were we really have a past life? But I also have, struggle trying to imagine going to heaven or hell after dying in this body as well. All of it, you know, none of it can be proven. At least I can't prove it. So these are just ideas and they're theories and there's, science behind it. But I guess I want to bring Lorna on for a second, in case you kind of have a follow-up, because it was a big question. I just want to make sure that we're kind of getting to the essence.
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, it's well done. It is a big subject. I think maybe I didn't make it clear in the question that there are positive and negative samskaras, and there's also this positive negative karma. So I was looking for a connection. Is there a historical link in some of the scriptures that, some of the old ancient texts that came up with an evaluation of how perhaps taking good action, creating good karma intentionally, is that somehow or other going to affect any of those deeper negative samskaras, or are they fairly unconnected?
No, I would say they're definitely connected. And if we look to the scriptures, some of them will speak highly of karma yoga, which is taking right action, taking pious action, which is going to generate more pious reaction and, quote unquote, good karma. But then, of course, there's a lot of different types of yoga. So there's the bhakti yoga and jnana yoga. And so, for example, if we look at Patanjali yoga, the Yoga Sutras, right, it's not teaching us to go and take right action, or at least that's not the focus. It would support that, but it's more, well, let's look at the yamas and the niyamas. Let's practice by practicing nonviolence, by practicing truthfulness, by practicing cleanliness, by practicing disciplined austerity, all the different yamas and niyamas, devotion to God. That's what's going to cultivate, and then of course there's asana, pranayama, and all the steps. And eventually, if we get to samadhi, to enlightenment, if you will, nirvana, then if we get to that point, well, then we're not dealing with our karmas and samskaras at that point. We've merged with consciousness. So I guess to answer your question, yes, we can use karma yoga to lessen the strength that samskaras have on us and to bring more pious karma into our lives. Because you're right, karma doesn't mean negative, right? There's good, and samskara doesn't mean negative either. There's this, like, our friend Professor Edwin Bryant is like, keep studying Sanskrit, like keep studying the language of the gods and these great yogic texts, because this is creating imprints and samskaras on our subconscious. And this is why we chant the mantra, why I've got this is why I'm so grateful for these beads that Mars gave me, because now, for 16 rounds every day for about 2 hours a day, instead of obsessing about all the nonsense that normally goes on up here, at least 2 hours, I'm like chanting the names of God, and I'm praying, and I'm feeling gratitude. Then maybe I think about Mars, because I'm like, oh man, I love these beads. But then I come back to the mantra, and so, like, these are new samskaras that I'm creating. I got a lot of old stuff from the past that I still got to erase. And that's why we do this sadhana. That's why we do the spiritual practices. And it's like you alluded to, it's complex because there's so many different ways. And then ultimately bhakti yoga, which is about seva and service and devotion to God and
You cut
that
out
says,
a second.
so yeah, so there's, bhakti yoga, which is all about contribution and love and seva and service. And some would say, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the highest form of yoga. I mean, this is where we all got to find our own path. It's like I dabbled with the Yoga Sutra. I wouldn't say dabbled. I sincerely practiced the Yoga Sutras, and then also Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And right now it's Bhakti Yoga. This is like the yoga of love, the yoga of the heart, the yoga of service. And it's, yeah, I guess coming
And
back.
some of our teachers will exist in the world and not create any karma, not negative and not positive, which is also another kind of level of the game where and maybe for some it might be the goal of their life and their spiritual path eventually to not create any karma, because that is what ties us into this body and into the drama and the rebirth, according to some traditions as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think for you, Lorna, like I love the question. I love that, you're putting to yourself so fully into the practices, into Vipassana meditation and the Buddhist teachings, and you've been on lots of the great courses with us on Krishna and Christ and the yoga philosophy and spirituality, and it's good to keep educating ourselves in this, and I guess I'm speaking myself here, also trusting ourselves. Like, if we show up and we do our practice, and we try to be a good person, and we, even as we're taking these actions, letting go the attachment, right? So it's like, do your duty, do your dharma, but without any attachment to the results or the fruits. And so, yeah, I think you're on such a beautiful path.
Yeah, and even just the fact that you ask this very good quality question
Yeah.
is what we talked about earlier. What happens then is that realized wisdom will, come to you. The answers will reveal themselves to you as you keep asking really good questions. And one piece will land from here and the other piece, and then you feel it inside like, whoa, this is what actually makes sense to me. And that will be also due to your samskaras. What works for you, what lands for you, what reveals itself to you, for you, is also determined by the makeup that your beingness already has. And it
Yeah.
will keep molding itself as you keep on keeping on.
Such a good question. Thank you so much for sending that in, Lorna. Let's send so much love, high vibes. Portugal, well, Jersey Island originally, Portugal representing today. Amazing, amazing. And for anybody else, if you have questions, please send us an email, info@happyjackyoga.com. And we'd love to address it on the podcast. But Hanna, in this last stretch, the home stretch, it's time for the hot seat. It is time. Hanna is putting me on the hot seat. Bring it on. Knock me off. What do you got?
So I want to stick with the conversations we've had today rather than bringing in a different energy of questions. You've said so many amazing things, and I would like to hear from you, like you're a seeker, you're a sincere seeker, and that's why you're like, so you sometimes you call it like you want to figure it out, right? So there's the conscious, like the knowledgeable part of you that wants to know what's next and what the right thing for you to do is, like what decisions to make. Like it seems like you're often searching for that. But now this weekend, you had really amazing conversations and you were told to trust your own nature by a therapist and probably by Mars and other conversations. And so if you were now put on the hot seat and somebody asked you, what is your true nature? What would you say it is?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I I think it's evolving. Well, my true nature is not evolving, but I guess I'm slowly figuring out what it is, and I'm learning to trust myself, and I'm learning to accept myself. I guess not because what I know about myself, and you've alluded to, Hannah, I can stretch myself, and if someone challenges me to be a monk and live a monastic life and super disciplined, I can do it, and I can thrive in that environment, and I can do well. But that doesn't mean that that's my nature and the way that I'm meant to spend my life. In fact, I'm kind of learning, if I were to guess right now in crystal ball, and I think this came from last week's episode and these conversations in DC, I'm going to give myself this experience of practicing, this monastic life over the summer because I'm going to be in India. But I feel like, my nature is to be with people and to engage in meaningful conversation. It's like what I love more than anything. I mean, you guys know it. I go to lead a yoga teacher training, and you and other team members have to remind me, like, Jack, we got to do some asana. We got to do some poses here as well. This is yoga teacher training because what I want to do is engage in meaningful conversation and help people discover themselves. I think it seems like my nature is, although I haven't fully discovered my nature and who I am, what I my most natural expression is to just be in these heartfelt, deep, open conversations.
Yeah, like I see that definitely in you that you are very powerfully seeking connection. Like that's the thing even about like introverts. It's not that introverts don't want to be connected. They definitely do, maybe even more than the extroverts, but it just takes a different expression. And what I hear you share right now is something I can definitely like recognize in you and see in you ever since and I'm sure way before you and I even met, that you are seeking for connection, not just with God, but also with your fellow human beings. And
Yeah.
having those meaningful conversations are helpful to you as well because something reveals itself to you as you engage with the yogis or your friends for a brunch for 4 hours and in the teacher trainings when you would rather be in conversation with the yogis than in down dogs, although you love down dogs too.
Yeah. And if I get just vulnerable for a second here and think back to just some of these realizations this past weekend, I like really a lot has opened up since you shared with me, with us, that you've met somebody, and I feel like this freedom and this space in my life. And I find myself like, you know, I really do want to share my life with somebody. And like, so you and I, we were together, we're best friends, and we'll continue to be best friends. And so when we created so much amazing stuff together, and and it was in a way selfish of me to try and like hang on to that. Let's keep riding, let's keep things going because it's great. I'm living with my best friend, and we're co-creating amazing stuff together. And as great as that was, it wasn't the full extent of what relationship can be for either of us.
Mhm.
And you recognized it a lot earlier and more clearly and obviously. And so, you know, you really, you know, we're a stand for that. And now you've found somebody. And so I guess as I'm and my therapist helped me kind of reframe it, because I was like, as I'm thinking about this and I'm meeting different women, and I'm starting to think in my head like, wow, like I feel this attraction to that person, and but really reframing it as, you know, I'm receptive. So I'm not seeking. I'm because I know right now I am practicing a monastic lifestyle and celibacy, and I'm going to India to live with the monks for a couple of months. And I'm really committed to this for the next few months, but I can feel inside what my nature is. And my nature is that I would want to share my life with a woman. And that at least that feels right in this moment to say that. And and I guess just trusting that. But yeah, my therapist just helping me reframe it as kind of being receptive. It's like same when we're looking for a teacher. We don't want to be like, I mean, we all know this. We've all been taught this, right? We don't want to be like trying too hard, and but rather just being receptive. So I feel like I'm journaling about it in my journal. I'm like, hey, I'm noticing this. I'm noticing this inside of me. There's something tickling inside my heart. There's something that I notice, and I, wow, appreciate the beauty of, you know, somebody that I see. And then I guess but then letting it go and just trusting, because all the right people seem to be coming into my life, like from Mars to, I mean, even you and I getting to spend 10 years and co-create together, and we'll continue to do what we do. It just feels like everything has been perfectly, like there's somebody is pulling the strings, or I don't know how that all works, but I'm putting my faith and my trust into divinity. And but I guess coming back to, it feels like that's my nature, will be to share my life with somebody. So I thought, you know me, Hanna, you know, I thought, and I could do it. I could live by myself. I could live in an ashram. I could live in a cabin by myself in the middle of nowhere in Canada. I could do it, but that's not quite my nature. You know,
And
I
that's
think,
kind of like what you said about the relationship that you and I ended up, like our intimate relationship we ended up creating, isn't everything that a relationship can be. And same way, life living in a cabin in a forest or in a monastery somewhere, it's probably not everything that life could be and offer to you in terms of human experience. And so I love that you're curious to that and open about that rather than settling with something that you can manage and organize and be fine with. Rather, you are open and receptive for the full life experience in this lifetime with everything that you are. And it sounds to me like you were almost saying earlier when you were describing this, like a sentence that came to me was like that everything is full of blessings,
mm,
right?
yeah,
And that you and I and everyone is divinely guided, and
yeah.
that we can trust that. And then things will reveal themselves to you as you keep being in environments that are full of blessings.
Yeah. And again, coming back to like the people we surround with, and it's
Mhm,
and the importance of having different perspectives
mhm,
and people in healthy relationships like that, just being able to spend that time with Mars and his wife, Mani J, you know, and seeing the love they have for each other and the beautiful life they've created. And then being able to then talk to my therapist, Danya, and I know her husband, Bali, seeing
mhm,
and the beautiful family they have. And but then also having heartfelt conversation with my buddy Henry, and like we're both single, but we're recognizing that, we would want